Thank you for joining us for this morning's session on Blue Skies Ahead Climate Change Update. And with this, I would like to turn it over to Leanne to introduce our session and the first speaker.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the session Blue Skies Ahead Climate Change Update. We're going to hear about EPA Region 3's FY23 climate priorities. We're going to get a glimpse into the EPA Region 3's Priority Climate Action website and receive a preview of the next climate adaptation implementation plan to be published in the fall. This session will also include grantee insights from the Green Streets, Green Jobs, Green Towns grant program from the Chesapeake Bay Trust. I would like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Mathew Konfirst. He is a climate change coordinator in EPA Region 3's office in Philadelphia, where he engages on climate adaptation in a divisional, regional, national, and interagency capacity. He received his PhD in geology and environmental geosciences from Northern Illinois University, with research focused on understanding climate changes that have occurred in Antarctica over hundreds of thousands of years. Matt is also a returned Peace Corps volunteer who served in Ukraine and Guyana from 2013 to 2015. And with that, Matt, I would like to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Leanne. Let me share my screen really quick here. Okay, and hopefully everybody can see that. So I am Matt Konfirst. I am the climate coordinator in Region 3. I'm actually joining today from the National Adaptation Forum in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's wrapping up today. Hopefully you all have been enjoying the summit so far. So this is the climate change update session. And I'm gonna kick it off by talking a bit about what the Mid-Atlantic region has been doing to move the needle on climate action since our climate plan was released in 2022. So I'm going to talk about three main things today. The first one is the updates that we're making to our climate adaptation implementation plan, which we affectionately refer to as the CIPE in the region here. The second thing I'm going to talk about is how we've committed to tracking our successes. And the third piece is how we're engaging and aligning with partners on climate across the region. Okay, so the first up is the plan itself. I would also like to point out that our plan has been translated into Spanish, and both the English and the Spanish versions are available through the QR code that's on the screen right now. So I give folks just a second to scan that if they would like to. But yeah, so we have both of these available. When you get to that web page, you'll scroll down a little bit. This is all of the plans, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Okay, so the genesis of this current round of EPA climate planning really starts in 2021 when the agency released its Climate Adaptation Action Plan. That's that blue document that you see on the left there. In this document, EPA lays out a vision for what climate adaptation is, and it's pretty straightforward. It says basically EPA continues to fulfill its mission of protecting human health and the environment, even as the climate changes and its disruptive impacts increase. So the plan lays this out in a whole bunch more detail, but it essentially commits the agency to building climate into everything it does and doing that work with partners. So around 20 federal agencies submitted these plans in 2021, but EPA actually took things a step further. EPA Administrator Michael Regan asked that directed that all offices, that includes regional offices like the Region 3 office, as well as national program offices at headquarters, that they create implementation plans. And those plans were to have discrete measurable tasks that move the needle on climate resilience. And so in 2022, 20 EPA offices, including Region 3, released our implementation plans. Our cover there is the red and white one, second from the left. So we worked with divisions and offices throughout the region to develop a list of priority actions. That's what we call those discrete measurable tasks. And I'm going to show you some of those on the next slide. But we also realized that new ideas would sort of be bubbling up continuously as we did this work and moved forward with it. And so we made a commitment in the plan to update this document periodically as our knowledge and our experience working on climate grow. So we're currently finalizing an update to the 2022 plan, which we expect out later this year, hopefully sooner rather than later. So what will you see in that update? So there are some general updates, things like talking about the Inflation Reduction Act, which had actually passed just prior to the release of these plans, so they weren't incorporated in the plans at all. We have actually a brand new chapter on mitigating greenhouse gases. This is an adaptation plan, but we added a whole chapter on mitigating greenhouse gases. And looking at the relationship between climate adaptation, which is adjusting to the changes that are occurring in the climate, and climate mitigation, which is reducing the greenhouse gases that cause the problem to begin with. We have also expanded cross-programmatic chapters. So an example of that is providing more detail about how we're going to train our staff and keep everybody up to date with the latest on climate science. But really the biggest effort was put towards developing new priority actions. Okay, so the original 2022 plan had 9 priority actions, including one that was to finalize the plan. But these actions included things like analyzing flood vulnerability of Superfund sites, supporting climate resilient infrastructure, and engaging tribes in a meaningful dialogue on climate. So skip ahead to 2024, and we are adding 20 brand new priority actions into the plan. So that more than triples the number that we had from just 2 years ago. New actions include a host of things, including addressing scientific needs, building decision support tools, increasing the amount of internal training that we offer to our staff, strengthening climate partnerships, and even building connections to the disaster support work that we support as a regional office. This list really is a testament to the creativity and hard work of our EPA staff, who are committed to ensuring that the work that we do continues to protect human health and the environment, even as the climate changes. I'm really proud to be able to work with such an amazing group of people. Okay, so next up is climate successes. So all that work that I just talked about, we're committed to completing those actions. And so we decided to create a web page to publicly track all the progress on our priority actions. So there's another QR code on this slide. If you click on this or follow it, it will take you to a web page where you can explore each of the priority actions, see the measures that we're using to track each action, and then be able to see relative completeness of each action listed out by year. Then you'll notice that the titles here are hyperlinked when you get to the web page. So if you wanted to learn more about that action, you can actually click on it and open up a PDF and read more detail about it. This page gets updated periodically, typically quarterly, so you can check in from time to time and see, how progress is going on all these. And of course, we'll be adding all of these new priority actions into this list as well going forward. Okay, the final topic is engaging with partners and aligning with their climate priorities. And so what we created was the climate, one of the things that we've created to help with this is the climate plan dashboard. So this is a first step to aligning priorities just simply by mapping out where climate plans exist across the region. Again, a QR code will take you to this resource. You can explore the plans that are listed in there. You can easily filter by state, plan type, and publication year. There are links to all of the documents that are provided, so you can read in more detail about a specific location. And I will say that most of the plans that are in here at the moment are some combination of a climate adaptation and or climate mitigation plan. But we also realize that there are other plans that connect into this. And so we've also built in room for green infrastructure planning and also hazard mitigation plans that have a significant climate component. So this dashboard is also designed to be updated periodically, so we can capture new plans that are being developed or plans that we didn't capture in the initial round of sort of scouring the web looking for these that are scattered all over the place. So if you do see something missing, there is a way through the website to contact us and have it added. And then finally, my last slide here, understanding who's engaged in climate planning and what issues they're focused on is one way to support each other's climate efforts. But I also wanted to point out this subset of those priority actions that I showed a list on a couple slides ago. Every action that's on the slide has some sort of collaboration or coordination component built into it. So these are working relationships that could be with a specific locality, or they could be sort of, engaging with a regulated community, for example, or a broader community somehow. But the goal in each case is the same. It's to support each other as we pursue climate resilience across this beautiful, diverse region that we all call home. And working to build a more inclusive future for everybody who lives there. So this is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take questions during the Q&A at the end. So thank you for your time and hope you enjoy the rest of your summit today.
Great, thank you, Matt, so much for that. I'd like to introduce our next presenter. She will be Lexi Smith will be presenting. She is a parent of a 6th grader, 3rd grader, and a pre-K 4 student at Payne Elementary School in Washington, D.C. She's a parent volunteer who likes to write grants in her spare time. And these grants have ranged from field trips to books to downspouts and new gardens. She isn't a great gardener, but she does love problem solving. So with that, Lexi, please take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. As you can see, this is the title of our grant, Quenching Payne's Thirst for Learning and Growing. And this is the 5th grade class on a field trip with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation last year. I'm going to spin this slide. So for background for us, we applied to track 4 of community greening for the Green Streets, Green Jobs, Green Towns grant program through the Chesapeake Bay Trust. We are the Payne Elementary School PTSA in Washington, D.C., and we were awarded $50,000, which was in July 2023, which for a small elementary school is just a really generous and lovely gift from the grants that you guys run. And we are so grateful that we can solve some of our stormwater problems with this grant money. So for our location, you can see here, we are in the 98% for underground storage tanks and releases, and that we are also very close to the Anacostia River. That was part of our intention with building this grant and building these opportunities for our students, is that we are walking distance away from the Anacostia River. So we want the kids to be able to experience that. Some background on our school. We have about 380 students. Leah mentioned that I have students, my kids range from pre-K 4 to 6th grade, because in DC we do have early childhood education. So we do start pre-kindergarten, pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 are 2 years before kindergarten. Our school is 100% reduced or free lunch, 100% free lunch and 32% at risk. Our demographics are there. Our building was originally built in 1896. There was a fire in the 1980s that burned down that building. And then there was another building, and then it was modernized between 2014 and 2016. So during that modernization, the renovation actually did not replace the lead pipes that they were found. They just sort of just shut them off and capped them in the walls, which has limited our ability to have outdoor water spigots from the building, but also, and this is, I'm just a parent, there was not downspouts attached to the building. They were like scuppers, kind of like on a boat. And so the water has been draining down the bricks for the last couple years, and then also causing quite a bit of runoff on the streets. So we will get to that in a second. So why did we apply for this grant? So after COVID, the kids were all out of the building for a while and everything was on pause. And one of the things that our principal felt like was a really important aspect for not just the educational return of the students, but the social emotional was outdoor education and outdoor learning. And so the administration of our school made an important decision to put in resources that we had received from the federal government outside of this grant through kind of COVID money for students towards outdoor educational experiences. So she used some of that money for our partnership with Fresh Farm Food Prints, which is an outdoor education program. I'm going to read it. It's a local organization. So this is a DC organization that integrates gardening, cooking, nutrition education into a curriculum through a model of partnerships, standard-based curriculum, cafeteria connections, and food access. And what the Fresh Farms does is they assign us two teachers at the school who run basically like once a month in building field trips for the kids. And so that did not exist pre-COVID in our school. It existed in other schools, but we did not have it. And our administration really wanted the social and emotional benefits of being outside, working with food, working in the ground, working with environmental education. And so she also wanted a lot of field trips. That is something that's always been part of our model, but after having kind of been homebound for so long, she really wanted new experiences. And the idea of environmental education field trips combined with this food prints was really important to her, as well as our school got chickens. That's not related to the grant at all, but it's just very fun that we have 4 hens at the school all year long that the kids can interact with. We do also hatch chickens. In the science teacher hatches chickens every year, and the social emotional benefits of chickens are really quite large. They really help kind of with emotional regulation and calming the kids down to have these like cute little chickens. So that was our context for COVID, but we had this prior experience with having these smaller grants from the Chesapeake Bay Trust. And I'm about to show you some pictures of field trips and some pictures of what we did. But for lessons learned for other people who might be applying for these grants, it's really important to understand that failure is like a common part of grant writing, and it is not the end. So I'll get to that in a second though. And then, like I mentioned, we had these long-standing stormwater runoff issues at the school. That was a combination of the scuppers as well as having lack of water outside. We've just had to adjust to either having too much water or not enough water. And like I said, we've had unbelievable support from our school custodial staff and administrative staff, from the principal and the head custodian, on just helping these are issues that they wanted to solve, and we have been in partnership with them to provide our energy and time and parent resources to try to solve them. So education, field trips, and baby chicks. So the first time that we applied for the grant from Chesapeake Bay Trust was for the $5,000 MWE field trip, the Meaningful Water Initiative. I'm not going to remember that acronym. And we didn't get it. And one of the reasons that we didn't get it was because we had not applied for an action project. We were looking for more field trips, but we were not thinking of like trying to solve a problem or have the kids have something they could put into place after they had learned about the importance of the river's health. And the wonderful people from Chesapeake Bay Trust kind of talked me through how important that is for the way that the kids learn and the way that they see kind of both long-standing change for our climate, as well as giving the kids the ability to see that they have the ability to put into practice what they have learned on these field trips. So we applied again. And we had these successful grants. We've had 3 years of these trips through this $5,000 grant, and they have bolstered our self-efficacy in applying for grants. And they have also provided free trips to every student in the school through a variety of partners. Chesapeake Bay Foundation, Living Classrooms, Anacostia Watershed Society, Urban Adventure League, Washington Youth Garden, Anacostia Education Resource Center, and Kingman Island. And we, previous to these grants, had a relationship with Anacostia Watershed Society where they would do this amazing field trip with the second graders in our local area, where they would kind of walk through meadow development and stormwater runoff and how to create these like deep root systems to stop the water. So they basically trained me in solving the problem when I was told by CBT that I needed to find an action project. So what happened after that was we started to notice that this stormwater problem was just a disaster. I mean, this is a main walkway into the ECE, the little kids entrance for the school. And it's just constantly flooded. You can see the building has water runoff and water. I mean, it just is a bad situation. And so with CBT sort of offering us money and telling us to try to focus on solving a problem, we did. We kind of worked through creating this big French drain to try to help solve the problem. And it did. It helped solve some of the water, but we still noticed that like we didn't have downspouts and the water was still coming. And we now have this outdoor education program that we wanted a bigger garden, but we don't have outdoor water. It's just, so when the Green Streets grant came along, we took a risk of just jumping in because we had these 3 grants that had been successful. We were seeing these problems and we had been trained by all of our environmental education field trips as going as parents to sort of see some of the things that we could do to solve. So we took a chance and we applied, and we are so grateful that we got the money. We are still in the middle of kind of implementing all of this project, but our main focus has been installing downspouts and then rain gardens so that we can have those big root systems. Installing a green barrier for pollinators on our enlarged vegetable garden that Food Prince is going to use because we have just 4 of them right now, 4 or 5. And then installing modular garden beds around, that's what we had installed, and then removing invasive species, which I've learned all about. So the first one is our downspouts. I love these downspouts so much. I talk about them all the time. People are very tired of hearing me talk about downspouts, but we installed them. They're high up, as you can see. They covered the scuppers. They walked around. We're very excited, and then they will feed into the rain gardens. We have this beautiful plan from our partner at Ginkgo Gardens to put in this amazing garden, and he has utilized all of the plants that we bought with our CBT money last time when we put them over the French drain are going to be just repurposed and reused. And you can see there that the pooling is kind of at a low spot, so we're kind of moving the plants over to where the edge of the fence is, and we're just really excited to have so many pollinators, to use this kind of dead space that we have out there. It's very shady and very boggy. And then we have put in 5 of these modular garden beds, and we are going to, and they have a connection to the one spigot we have, in a spigot that connects all the way around to the existing garden beds, but now they will connect to these, and we'll have irrigation so that we can utilize that one spigot we have to keep these vegetables growing, and for this, school program that we have just loved and have really wanted to work with. And we have tried to utilize our money in every way possible by getting, free compost from the city. We're getting free compost from the pilot that's happening here. We're going to buy some with a discounted price. Love and Carrots is who's installing our irrigation. But we also needed to, I'll get to it, but we also needed wood chips. And so we've used our own invasive species that we cut down, which was fantastic. And then our last thing we wanted to do was for both water and stormwater and pollinators and creating a space for learning as well as safety of the kids, we are creating a green barrier that blocks from the new modular beds. There's a sidewalk, and then we're creating a green barrier that's going to have like lovely hoops that have places for the plants to grow and all of these native species that are going to be in there. And it will help break up some of the tons of asphalt that we have in the back there, but as well create a block from the vegetable gardens for all of the cars and the exhaust and all of that stuff, as well as pollinators for the plants, which we're very excited about. And then here we removed these invasive species, and then we had the wood chips cut down, and we used those as part of like the bottom of where we put the modular beds. You can see here that the modular beds were not put in yet when they had cut down the trees, but we've learned all about Tree of Heaven and how terrible they are. And then we got some of the food print students are holding radishes. You can see, got to watch the tree being cut. That's not a Tree of Heaven, that's an elm, but it needed to be trimmed. So we paid for that too with the grant money. And yeah, this is a massive team effort. I am here today talking to you, but it has been written by multiple parents. The implementation has been included by even more. We could not do this project without the complete and absolute support of the custodial staff and the principal. I mean, and that has gone for everything we have done with the school. We really do want to thank DC Public Schools and DC Public School Facilities for we had to get their approval to apply, and we had to get them to be on board with us for this and to help us with permitting and all of that. So we're not done. You know, everything always takes a really long time, and we're now running like a major construction project at the school, but it's going to be beautiful. And we are so grateful to Chesapeake Bay Trust and EPA, because I just thought this problem was not solvable, because it's almost no money to probably the EPA, but it is a massive amount of money to our little school. So we are so grateful. All right, I will absolutely answer questions after. I think I saw some popping up, but I would be happy to answer any questions after. And I don't know what I am on time, but Leanne, I will pass it back to you.
You're good. Thank you so much. What a great story. And it's great to hear all this good money being put to good use. So thank you for that. And our last presenter today is going to be Rebecca Stack. She is a civil engineer whose work is at the intersection of urban design, ecosystem science, and water resource management. She's an educator and the principal of Design Green. During her tenure as a code official for the District of Columbia, she co-authored the city's stormwater retention standards and its innovative stormwater retention trading market. In the private sector, Rebecca has worked on all aspects of stormwater management retrofits and compliance, from planning and design to construction and maintenance. Her most recent work focuses on the integration of water quality and flood management with blue-green infrastructure and community engagement, and the consensus design process on neighborhood scale urban resilience projects. So with that, I would like to introduce you to Rebecca Stack.
All right, thank you, Leanna. I'm pleased to represent the G3 grant recipient, the Warm Springs Watershed Association, and talk about their tree canopy restoration efforts. Let's see. This is funded by the US EPA, the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection, and the Chesapeake Bay Trust. My company, Design Green, is the watershed's engineering consultant, and I'll be sharing the project's goals, approaches, and outcomes. I'm going to take out my cough drop. First, some context for the project. The Warm Springs run watershed is in the middle western section of the Chesapeake Bay. It is an 11.8 mile stream in Morgan County, West Virginia, that discharges to the Potomac River. It runs parallel to the existing US Route 522. It's a narrow system draining almost 10,000 acres with steep slopes and shallow soils. Sections of the run closest to the confluence with the Potomac River remain relatively undisturbed. But the upper watershed sections are increasingly impervious and making the system more prone to flash floods. The Warm Springs Run conveys thermal waters valued for their history and therapeutic uses. While the springs have been protected, the run has been impacted in the past by sewage and industry waste, and now by urbanization and roadways. The Warm Springs Watershed Association has been actively working for 16 years to restore and protect these waters. The association's studies, plans, and actions span tree planting and invasive species management, green infrastructure strategies, water quality monitoring, and much more. The West Virginia Department of Highways, DOH, has a major highway improvement project underway that is expanding the existing US 522 from a 2-lane to a 4-lane roadway. So the reconfiguration aims to alleviate growing traffic congestion and improve safety. It is having a major impact on the nearly quarter of the stream length, including clear cutting 240 acres of vegetation and trees. So the Watershed Association framed their grant as a request for a charrette-style workshop to engage decision makers at West Virginia's Department of Highways, DOH, in a conversation about how to both restore this project's tree canopy and how to affect policy to ensure future major roadworks minimize clearing and maximize restoration as part of their underlying design and construction scopes. As the consultant, we invested time with the Watershed Association and their partners to better understand how they would define a successful workshop. We found a very strong positive relationship with DEP and a working relationship with DOH's regional officers, their project contractor, and site inspectors. As we worked through the historic and current site data and the construction documentation, we whittled down a very large invite list from 80 to 35 and then down to 15 to focus less on a broad community engagement and more on creating a positive, collaborative, and importantly, non-confrontational conversation with key DOH central office decision makers. To avoid putting any of the participants in a defensive position, the charrette objective was reworded to remove statements with specific desired outcomes for the specific project. The general. The invitation was framed as an open-ended discussion. Key questions were asked in advance and responses were collected in advance. And this Q&A influenced the creation of the activities for the charrette. And activities were structured to allow participants to use large format plans in small groups to illustrate and locate opportunities and challenges in a very general way. The charrette had 3 group activities, each asked a series of questions. Excuse me. Using a small section of the overall project, participants were asked to constrain clearing, define where revegetation is needed, to think about roadway cross-section pavement diets and policy change opportunities. The groups of 4 to 5 people were structured to ensure each had a mix of the organizations and provide each group with a different section of roadway project. group participants were remixed with each activity to keep the group dynamic fresh. Activities used different perspective, mixing plan views and cross sections and photographs. And this is a photograph of the one section of the existing 522 work. You can see that the level of clear cutting. For each activity, each group reported back to the whole for general discovery and discussion. And I would say it was here where everyone came together, where the power dynamics of a very small watershed organization going up against, or they felt like they were going up against, the cloak of how state government works and how a Department of Highways works. It really pulled the curtains back, and it was very collegial. Each side learned a lot from the other about why they do things the way they do. We recorded the big ideas as they were discussed on large flip charts. And we had these really deep, and heartfelt discussions about where it was not possible to bridge divides between the environmental goals and the highway construction process. And remarkably, leadership from DOH, DEP, and the Warm Springs Watershed Association left the event on a positive note, with informal commitments on all sides to continue the revegetation discussion. A follow-up from DOH almost within days after the event. DOH stated they determined tree planting within the West Virginia DOH right-of-way will be allowed, and an agreement is now being drafted between DOH and the tree planting advocates on the specifics. Safety and maintenance are DOH's concerns, and these will define the planting setbacks and limit tree size in the highway clear zones. More generally, DOH is open to exploring using pollinator seed mixes and planting perennial plots throughout. DEP and the Watershed Association are exploring tree planting funding options. The Watershed Association pointed out that the Federal Department of Transportation has policies to encourage landscaping highways with native plants and offers technical resources and financial assistance. Despite this, many states are leaving revegetation up to contractors who select the cheapest vegetative mix, unfavorable to pollinators, and detrimental to improving landscape resilience. The Watershed Organization wants to see local input on revegetation plans, plants selection supported by the Watershed Association, seed mix approval by the West Virginia DEP, not the project contractor. And most importantly, to the Watershed Organization, they want the final revegetation contracts separate and to stand alone from the main project contract to close out all new road construction projects. So this is what they're trying to negotiate with Department of Highways. And this charrette sort of opened the conversation and gave them some even footing in that effort.
One more minute, please. Oh, you're at your questions.
Should I stop sharing?
Is that your final?
Yeah.
Slide? Thank you. Appreciate that. Great presentation. So now I'd like to open it up for question and answers. If the presenters could all come back on. And we have maybe a few minutes. I'm probably not going to get to all the questions, but I will go through a few of these. So the first question that came in was for Matt, the chairman or the chair of the Lower Marion Township Environmental Advisory Council wanted to know what is the most important issue for PA municipalities to focus on.
Yes, that's a great question, and I think some of the presentations that we just listened to kind of illustrate the answer to that question that I was thinking about. So it really depends on the community. It's really up to the community to identify what the needs are and you know, how do you what do you want to get done? So I live in Conshohocken, and I can say, you know, from a climate perspective, some of the things that I think about, we live right on the Schuylkill River. You know, our community lives right on the Schuylkill River. And so thinking about flooding and increasing flood frequency going forward is really something that's on my mind. And so I see a lot of construction going on along the river, and I think about those issues. But we're also a community on a hill. So if you move to the top of the hill, the flood vulnerability threat drops substantially, but you're at the top of a hill, you're in a built up area. And so I start thinking about heat effects, you know, what happens in the middle of summer when my kids are doing outside activities and they're, you know, up at the hill, top of the hill where there's maybe not a lot of shade where they're doing their activities, and thinking about like heat stress and heat issues for them in the summer. So so I guess the short answer is it really depends what your community, you know, needs are and what the issues are in the specific setting and you know, government institution that you have working at that particular location. So it's sort of a discussion, and then I think, you know, as an EPA employee, those kind of discussions are good for us to hear, and to hear those needs so that we can kind of connect more, you know, maybe try to connect people with resources like this G3 grant program that may be of benefit to your community. Again, yeah, addressing your needs. So I don't know if that was a fully satisfactory answer, but but there we are.
Thank you. And to kind of piggyback on that, a question for Lexi, and this kind of relates to what Matt just said, is how did you initially hear about these grants so that you could start a project such as the one at the school?
Yeah, it's a great question. So initially we found Chesapeake Bay Trust from just Googling that we had a need for field trips and that we wanted to find grants for them because that's just a typical way that we try to fund our field trips. So, but I have applied for a lot of different field trip grants and a lot of different groups, and really no one is like CVT. They are so helpful and their website is so full of information, and they set up this program in the beginning when the grant is first out to give you information on what makes a good application and how it works. They basically like train you to help think through how to do it, which as it just provides the opportunity for people like myself who are not, I am not an environmental specialist. I mean, I can write, but I don't know exactly what they're looking for and what they want. And having them walk through that as a participant that is trying to apply is of immense value. And then once you kind of interact with them, they're lovely, and they just keep letting you know about other opportunities because they're looking for more people to apply as well, and they want people to know about it. So initially I just looked on their website a bunch and Googled things to try to find out what was because I knew what what Matthew's saying, I knew what my need was, and I was just looking on who would fund it. But I will say that CBT's website is so full of information and so helpful, and then the staff is fantastic. So I haven't experienced that level of support from other grants that we've gotten, which is just a testament, I think, to how much they want these to be successful. So
Great. Yes, and you'll see in the chat, those of you that Sam Ratchko is one of the EPA employees who works on G3 grants, and she put the link in the chat for anyone who's interested. The request for proposals will open this December for the upcoming round of G3 grants. So if you're interested, I would definitely check it out and send your applications into that. And then one more was, well, there's one about what the status of the watershed partnership workshop is. Can anyone answer?
Yeah, so I can answer that one. That one was one of the priority actions listed on one of the slides. So that is an ongoing collaboration at this point with the Delaware River Basin Commission. And so when that idea originally was kind of floated around, we didn't have a specific partner in mind, just was thinking that it makes a lot of sense to get communities together who live within a watershed to work together, because what happens upstream affects what happens downstream. And so, you know, planning for changes in river flow and changes in precipitation, you know, building climate into that planning just seemed like a good idea. And so that planning is going forward right now with the DRBC, the Delaware River Basin Commission, and we're hoping to do that sometime later this fall with them.
Awesome, great to hear. And then the last question in the chat is, I guess again for you, Matt, is how much of a factor are global volcanic eruptions in emitting carbon into the atmosphere? Do you have an answer for that?
I mean, the quick answer is they're, you know, part of the natural carbon cycle, but really being overwhelmed by what we as humans are introducing into the atmosphere, and so that's really, when I talked about, say, our mitigation chapter, it's really the focus on the human emissions and controlling those to minimize these impacts that we're going to have to adapt to going forward. So the more we can control those emissions, the less of a problem it causes in the long run, and the less adaptation that we have to do, which saves money, saves time, and allows us to go along with our lives a little bit more easily. So
Great, thank you. And a couple just kudos to Lexi for her inspiration and what she's able to achieve with this grant and the school's accomplishments. So that's all I see in the chat. Thank you everyone for your involvement and interest in the climate change update. I guess we will convene to the next session as you see fit. Thank you to our presenters. I appreciate everyone contributing and being here for this and supporting our summit.